Sunday Night Football. Chiefs are favored at home. Again, we finally got, they were favored last week on the road, but they've been underdogs at home recently, facing a Lions team that I had some questions on, I'll talk about, but they're answering the bell on offense and defense, and they got some reinforcements coming. This is also our Haas fight of the week. Over-under of this game is 53, by the way. The Chiefs are favored 2.5 points. The Haas fight is when the Chiefs have the ball, but we're going to start with when the Lions have the ball going against this Chiefs defense that, actually, when watching it back, played pretty okay against the Jags. I know that's maybe not coming across. They did give up a little bit of success rate there, but this Chiefs defense going against a Lions offense that played the Bengals has some injuries throughout this team in Detroit, which I'll talk about. But what are you focusing on this side of the ball, Charles?
The Lions, they've had an interesting run this season where I think overall, like the John Morton switch has been a success. Like if you just look at their offensive numbers, they are they look the same.
They're still good.
They're still really good. Yeah. They're still really good. Yeah, they score a whole bunch of points. But I did notice something that made me go back to their game against the Browns, because I was mostly looking at their defensive stats over the last 2 weeks. And when I isolated, I noticed something about their offense where just over the last 2 weeks, they were 22nd in EPA per play, with a negative number there in that stat. So I went back to their game against the Browns, and I've forgotten because the final score was 34-10, but that was a little more of a slugfest than I remember. Like the Browns defense really kind of brought it to them up front. And I think if you are like worried about one area of the Lions offense, maybe it's like the fact that like an elite unit up front or an elite player up front can still kind of cause some problems for them. Now, in the Browns situation, their offense was just so bad in that game that eventually, you're just going to win the war of attrition. And if you get the ball back enough times, you can still score 34 points. But on a play-to-play basis, yes, war of competency. But like on a play-to-play basis, it was kind of a rough game for them. So, Chris Jones, he has a chance to bounce back here from one of the, if not, no, actually, no, I think the Albert Harrington play was worse, but one of the laziest plays that I've ever seen in NFL history at the end of that Jaguars game. Like if you just go back and watch, and there were a lot of poor efforts on the Chiefs defense on that last play where Trevor Lawrence scored a touchdown, because Trevor even said after the game, like, I got up and I got away from like the first, I'm paraphrasing, I got away from like the first guys, and then I was going to throw it out of bounds and I realized nobody was chasing me. So just went in, scored a touchdown, right? Which is,
it's took over.
Cool. Right. If I look over and I see Chris Jones literally like just standing still and walking, and look back, George Karlaftis, like they've stopped running after me too, and Nick Bolton stopped running. And the only person I got to dodge is a DB coming from the end zone. Yeah, I'm might as well just take that chance, even with no timeouts. It's a pretty favorable situation. But Chris Jones in this game, I think he's got a chance to like cause some problems for the Lions up front, which they'll probably need, because if he's not causing havoc, I just think the Lions skill players, like they could just shred that back seven of what the Chiefs have just collected talent wise. And I think that it's not like totally the same as what Ben Johnson done, but this offensive performance from the Lions, it's kind of made me. It's kind of just like another data point for Dan Campbell having his hands like all over everything Detroit does on offense, because a lot of it is pretty similar, and obviously you can see that they've started incorporating some more trick plays over the last few weeks. So this might just be like the Dan Campbell offense, and they're starting to figure out their groove. But I still think if Chris Jones kind of steps up and plays like we know that he can, they could run into a little bit of trouble against the Chiefs. But if not, I kind of think they could keep rolling on offense.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of have been looking. I was like, there's parts of this offense I'm like, yeah, this is like keep the good times rolling. And then there's some, they're run, just kind of like similar to 49ers. Their run game is taking like a slight step back. It's still good. It's just not overwhelming best, automatic set your clock to it. Like this is the first time that they've had negative EPA per rush since 2022, which, that was kind of like the early Dan Campbell years. It's their low success rate. Their success rate is lowered a little bit. It's 39.2%. Last year was 44%. So it's like 39% is fine. Like that's above the threshold. I've talked about this before, but 39% rushing success rate and 14% explosive pass rate is kind of the we can make a run in the playoffs numbers. And so as long as you're above it, you're fine. It's the passing has been just a little bit more peppering. Like Jared Goff, it's like that's actually been the thing that's been more consistent, which is kind of funny to talk about the Lions because it's like, well, the run game is this, and then the passing game is explosive, and you do other things off of it. So, but I still think it's good. Having said all that, like it's just that maybe some of the things are just a little bit different. I've mentioned before is that the last couple of weeks when we focus on the Chiefs defense is that, if you get them into big bodies, they've been pretty weak, and the Jaguars did it again, where if you get them into base defense, where they have 4-3 with 3 linebackers on the field, you can kind of make them basic. You can get after them a little bit more in the run game, which is kind of an irony of why put big people on if you can't defend the run. Might as well just go, light bodies. But the Jaguars did some cool things, like they were going 2 tight ends, getting a match with base, and then they spread them out, which is a classic kind of answer to it. That's where you saw Hunter Long get a catch on it. Giants, Lions, they'll do plenty of tight end looks. They'll do they've done more 3 tight end looks this year than they ever have. So that's something I think is interesting. But I agree with your point that Chris Jones can kind of maybe have not kind of, but take over or at least have big moments. The interior trio is improving for the Lions offense, but they still have moments where it's like, oh yeah, that's a second-year player, 6th-round pick. That's a rookie. That's a guy that's kind of been like a solid player in Graham Glasgow. Chris Jones has an advantage over all of them. And you got a backup left tackle. Taylor Decker didn't play last week. It was, what's his name? Giovanni Manu, who's a fun project player. Actually wasn't that bad against the Bengals. He was the Canadian guy that kind of came to football late that they drafted last year.
Yeah.
And he's a freak. Like he is a 0.001% athlete just figuring it out, but actually looked pretty good last week against the Bengals. So it's not maybe as much of a knock, but that's going against Trey Hendrickson and the Funky Bunch as opposed to Chris Jones and George Karl Loftus, who's been kicking ass this year. George Karl Loftus is having like a quiet breakout season. He's 3rd in the NFL with pressures. He has 27 pressures. That's 3rd in the entire NFL. 10th in pressure rate. Like that's elite. Like that's Pro Bowl, Pro Bowl level. Yeah. So, I think that they can have a couple of advantages, even if I do think the Lions offensive line is still pretty good. Also the Chris Jones thing, that final drive, LaQuint Allen, the running back for the Jags, who's an awesome pass protector, he chipped Chris Jones so hard in the ribs. And you could see him just going like, oh, that sucked. Like he was like, the next play, he's like, he gets up and he's like, I want no part of this. Kind of rallied as the drive went along. But Chris Jones on that last play, his miles per hour is 5.11 miles per hour.
That fast.
Next gen stats.
Wow.
I know, right? Next gen stats defines walking as 5 miles per hour or lower. So he was walking on the last play, which is just which is what it looked like actually. But no, I'm curious how Manu answers the bell against this defense, and I do think that the Lions have natural answers, which is a term I always use, but I think they do. But I do think that the Chiefs defense has some pieces up front to kind of make it ugly. So getting on to the other side of the ball with the Chiefs offense that really putting it together, especially last week, that they actually looked really good against that Jags defense, even if they didn't pull off the win. I mean, they had a success rate like 68%, something crazy. Yeah. Going against the Lions defense. And technically this is the Haas fight of this whole matchup. But when you're watching this side of the ball, rapidly improving Chiefs offensive line going against I keep saying Giants, a Lions defensive line that's getting back Aleem McNeil, which is super interesting. So what else are you focusing on this side of the ball?
That's a big, it's a big boost, obviously.
Big boost.
Lee McNeil, big boost.
All pro caliber. Dead serious. Not exaggerating. He is an all pro caliber defensive tackle. So that is a huge boost.
So we'll see how many snaps he plays in this game. Usually you see teams kind of ease guys back into the lab, especially because he had a late season ACL tear. So he's gotten back and back in the swing of things in less than a year. So I don't know if he'll play too many snaps, but whatever they get from him will be needed because, like you said, the Chiefs offense has improved. Even when it looked funky earlier in the season, they were still like 10th in EPA per play, and now they're one game away from getting. They're one game away from getting Rashee Rice back from suspension now, because his 6-game suspension will be up after this weekend. They figured something out with Tyquan Thornton. The offensive line's been playing well. I mean, they're doing a thing, man. They're doing a thing again.
They're inevitable, man.
They're inevitable. It looks like crap for a while, but you still look at some of the underlying stats, and they're still good. And you watch them play, and they're still, even though it looks awful, they are still getting in the end zone. So yeah, the Patrick Mahomes guy, having him on your team is pretty important. And I think, I kind of go back and forth with the Lions defense, but I over the past 2 weeks they've played a lot better. Like they're top 2 in most defensive stats, and their numbers have really risen. But that is against Jake Browning, who was benched in favor of Joe Flacco, who they just traded for, who the Lions played the week before in that 34-10 win over the Browns. So a lot of that is just you're playing Joe Flacco and the Browns, and Jake Browning, who has just melted into like a not playable quarterback after being pretty solid last year, or last time he had to play extended snaps when Joe Burrow got hurt. So when you go back to just like their first 3 weeks against Green Bay, Baltimore, and Chicago, which is probably closer tier to where the Chiefs are than Cleveland and where Cincinnati is right now. They really struggled. They were to a 28th in EPA per drop back, 23rd in EPA per play, and against the Chiefs offense is really improving. You got Mahomes. I think that this could be another opportunity for just kind of get after an inexperienced defensive coordinator. And in Kelvin Shepherd, and then get in the end zone a little bit more, or maybe more how people were expecting that coming into the season, when you just see Patrick Mahomes in that offensive line. Like they've really started turning the form. I think this is a good matchup for him.
Yeah, this is one that's like it grew on me as I did more prep, and I was like, oh yeah, this is actually really cool. Like McNeil coming back, obviously, but then Aiden Hutchinson still doing Aiden Hutchinson things. He's top 10 in pressure rate. Al-Qaeda Muhammad is having a midlife crisis breakout year. He's 5th in pressure rate in the entire NFL. He has a 19.8%, like 20% is like defense player of the year, like caliber. He's just under it. Like, good on him. That's awesome.
Yeah. He's one of my guys I've watched forever. I'm like, why aren't you better? Like, what's the hang up here? Because he would have games where he was like blackout good and then just disappear for seasons at a time. So it's good to see that this is clicking for him now.
It is, yeah. And, they got some beef. The linebackers are playing well. Alex Anzalone was a guy I used to make fun of, and now he's just like a good starter now. Didn't think he should have held out for a contract this year, but still a good player. Jack Campbell has really improved. He's really good against the run, and coverage-wise, he's getting better, like turning his back and everything. Their back end is battered. Terrion Arnold is getting like his 40th doctor's opinion on his injuries. I think Kirby Joseph did not participate in practice as well this week. So, that's interesting, especially as this kind of Chiefs passing game is kind of really coming to its own. Like the Tyquan Thornton thing it's kind of I started as a bit, but it's actually really like he has a great connection with Mahomes. Like Mahomes trusts him fully, and he just keeps answering the bell. Like that's real. Like that's not just a couple lucky deep balls. It's week in, week out. And then, Xavier Worthy kind of keeps getting hurt, but then keeps coming back. They're kind of like all slotting into their roles, and it's making sense. But this is the most Mahomes has ever targeted receivers in his career. Like this is the fewest he started tight ends and other positions, which I think is interesting because now they're getting Rashee Rice back. Like, okay, that's a lot of. I think Rice is incredible. Like I think he's very, very good, and that's why I think he's kind of just been so out of sight, out of mind since once he got hurt last year. His underlying numbers last year, I think he's incredible, especially all the Dink and Doug stuff. Like he actually creates yak, but also like just underlying numbers. He was like one of the most like efficient receivers in the NFL. Like he was up there with Puka Nacua until he got hurt last year. I know it's only a month, but this is real. So like that's going to be, it doesn't apply to this week, but it does matter going forward. I just think this can be a really good test for both teams. Like, is this Lions defense still championship caliber, or is it more just fine to good? Is this young Chiefs offensive line, like, are they real? Like Josh Simmons looks awesome, and Kingsley Suamataia, the left guard, is really coming along. I know I always bring him up, but he's actually like improving, where I feel good about 4 spots on the Chiefs offensive line, the highest paid guy, the right tackle was Jawan Taylor, is the guy I trust the least, which is a good thing. Like it's all about your best 5. So if you have no true weaknesses going against a defensive line that has no true weaknesses, I don't think that's pretty cool. And it should be a fun matchup. Yeah, I'm really excited to watch it. It's on top of all the Mahomes stuff and the kind of developing Chiefs offense. Brashard Smith is getting a lot of touches, and you can see the juice that he provides. Like the run game is really cooking. Like that's a big offensive line. So these running backs
get a real running back.
I know.
Get a real one.
Brashard Smith has a chance, but it's just I know. Like trade for Tyler Algier. How would you think about that? Tyler Algier would run for 1,400 yards in this offense. Like
I just don't want the Falcons to have more draft picks. We'll just hold on to them until it's over. No more draft picks. No more burning of the picks. No. Yeah. Well, any other thoughts I had on Chiefs too? They're also a lot more RPOs, which is funny, is because they got away from that, and then now they've kind of brought it back because they're like, okay, you're going to play us this way. All right, we're going to just pepper RPOs. And Mahomes this is the quickest he's ever thrown the football in his entire career, 2.5 seconds, 2.54 seconds. So they're figuring out this year's version, which is so interesting. Sometimes it's not exactly what you always expect, but I do think it's a lot of positives, underlying stats and eye tests. So the Chiefs are even at 2-3. I'm like, yeah, here they go again. Here it comes 11, 12 wins. Here comes I forgot they're 2-3.
I mean,
oh man,
2-3 and. Every number points to them dominating the Jags. Even if the Jags played well, it's like just one of those NFL games. So this game, I'm very excited about this game. Obviously, it's Sunday night, all that stuff. So Chiefs favorites at Arrowhead. Who are you taking prediction wise?
I'm going to take the Chiefs. I think this is a big game for their offense. And I think Mahomes has a really big game. And then they get Rashee Rice back, and the schedule gets a little easier because they've low-key have had a gauntlet to start the season. Talk about the Chargers, Eagles, Ravens. Lamar played, for the first half in that game. Jaguars, who obviously no pushover. Then they got the Lions now, and then Raiders, Commanders, and it gets a little bit easier after that. But still, they've gone through it in the early portion of the season. But I think they're going to get out of here 3-3.
Yeah, that feels right. I think that feels right, obviously, because it's 3-3. It's not 2-3-1. No, I'm also going with the Chiefs because it's just kind of one of those. Maybe it's an old coach adage or whatever, old kind of like analysis here, but it's kind of like who needs it more. And to me, it's like the Chiefs need this win. Like they desperately need a big victory here. Just to, okay, get back to 500. Rasheed's coming back. Okay, let's roll. We'll get to our bye week soon. Okay, now we can ramp up in the second half of the season because even DB wise, they're figuring out who their guys are. Like Jaden Hicks is actually playing pretty well. Their safety, really good tackler, and they have just a couple other guys. Like they're trying to get involved. Like just enough with Chamari Connor or whatever. Because if Amon-Ra St. Brown's out there and Chamari Connor's in the slot, oh my God, Amon-Ra St. Brown might go for 180. It might go for $2 bills. So, but they're figuring that out. They're figuring out their way of getting around it. So I am going with the Chiefs. I think this is going to be an awesome game, both sides of the ball.